You being you is so freeing for everybody else. But that's the fear we live in, is that somebody is going to not like who I am.
You are going to know me. You're going to know my strong points, but that also means you're going to know my weak points, and allowing people to be there for you at your lowest and your darkest.
I'm just there to say, it's going to be okay. You're going to make it.
And what's deep inside you, in your core that's been planted there, is what's going to come to the surface. So what are you planting?
That is the longing we have inside of us. Tell me who God says I am.
Welcome to Authentic You, a podcast brought to you by the Women of Jesus Culture.
Happy New Year and welcome back to Authentic You. We have made it through the holidays. We a little bit had a crazy month of December, so we skipped a month of podcast. Sorry about that. But Becky isn't here right now because she had a baby.
Yay!
That was part of why it was a bit of a crazy month. We were waiting for that boy to be born. Perfectly healthy, great baby. But we have four-time Olympian Kelly Clark on the podcast today, and Becky is in that interview, but we are doing this intro without her. So just not to confuse you with what is going on, but I'm really excited for you guys to hear all about what Kelly has to say. And I've got a lot of good tips. You guys are really going to enjoy hearing about my snowboarding insights. Anyway, I survived Christmas. How was your Christmas?
Christmas was good. It was very quiet this year. My son, Ruben, is in the Himalayas with YWAM. So it was really odd without him. It was very quiet, but very good. Very relaxed.
I had all my chicks back in the nest, and I went 50-50 between I love this and I'm the worst mom in the world, because how can I just go hide somewhere and get away from the chaos that is in my house? But we had a lot going on this Christmas.
Hey, don't you have chicks? Tell everybody about your chicks.
I have a farm in my garage, and I invite people to come to my farm. It's not really a farm. I call it a farm. But me and my son, for his science project, incubated chicken eggs, which really is just an excuse for me to hatch chickens. And we only got 5 out of the whole batch of 24. We had 6, but I had to do a cesarean on that egg.
You saved its life.
I saved its life. And then I put a little bowl of water in the incubator and it drowned. So in the end, I guess I killed the chicken that I saved its life. And my baby bunnies that were born over Christmas break, they also didn't make it. So far, man, I'm failing at being a farmer, but I have high hopes. So my daughter was crushed because her whole dream of Christmas was to have baby bunnies, and they did not make it. It was very sad. I know this is why everybody wants to listen, is to hear this nonsense, right?
They do. It's very educational.
Yeah.
And probably illegal, the farm in the garage.
Shh. It's a great farm. I give the chickens to my mom. I just hatch them. People do stop by just to come see my chicks. There is one, this was very, along with my other chicken that drowned, there's one that was born with split legs. So it walked literally like it was doing the splits everywhere for 2 days, and it was awesome.
Is he better now?
Yep.
Aww.
I love animals that are slightly special that way. I feel like they're better. I kind of wish his legs still did that, but
there's always hope.
He's bounced back. So, welcome back. I'm excited for you guys to hear all about Kelly and her journey right now. She just wrote a book, which is amazing. I mean, if anybody knows what it takes to write a book, it is a feat. And she's sharing her journey and her story. And so we'll be giving away her book. It's a signed autographed copy. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this interview, and we will talk to you again later.
Hey, podcast listeners, don't want you to miss out on Kelly's incredible book, Inspired, and we've stocked our Jesus Culture store with copies just for you. Visit store.jesusculture.com and use the promo code INSPIRED at checkout to receive 15% off. Again, that's store.jesusculture.com, promo code INSPIRED. We'll also be giving away a few signed copies on Instagram and Twitter, so follow our Jesus Culture Podcast Network account at JC Podcast to find out how you can win.
All right, you guys, I'm really excited about today. We have Kelly Clark with us, and let's just say I have a secret obsession with Olympic athletes, because if I could have been anything in my life, if I could have chose, I would have been an Olympic athlete. And there are times I still think I could be an Olympic athlete, like
Curling.
Yes, curling.
With a broom.
Or did you see the people that shoot the guns?
Yes.
I'm like, I could shoot the gun to go to the Olympics. One lady was pregnant. Oh my gosh. See, I could be a gun shooter. I'm pretty sure I just need to be in the Olympics. But the other thing I wanted to say is the more you listen to me and all of us here, I'm not, how do we describe this? Well, it's called Authentic You. So I'm pretty real, and I'm not super impressed with people, if that sounds bad. But like, I can meet maybe somebody who's a big speaker and I don't think it's all that neat. Or, I mean, they're nice people. But if they're not nice people, I don't really care about you. You need to be nice, except if you're an athlete. Then, if you're an athlete, I lose all ability to speak and I start sweating and completely act awkward. But I will say, Kelly, the first time I met you, I was in Mammoth. Do you even remember this? This was so long ago.
I think you and Banning came through almost like 10 years ago, probably.
Yes. And I didn't really know who you were. So if I would have known who you were, you would have had a way more awkward CJ. But I didn't know till Banning went snowboarding with you and came back very proud that he snowboarded with an Olympic gold medalist.
I think that might have been the last time he went snowboarding, too.
Probably.
We should get him back out there.
Probably. But anyway, Kelly, you don't carry yourself like I would carry myself if I was an Olympic gold medalist. So I think you should loan me maybe a few of your gold medals, because I could represent it better. I think like just, like when you go to the grocery store, just have it on. Just to remind people what you've accomplished in life.
Yeah, Banning's actually told me the same thing. Like, he should take those, and every time I have my medals around him, he actually takes them and starts showing people them.
Yes, but it's like goals in life. Like nothing else matters besides being an Olympic gold medalist to Banning and I. And yet God did not gift us for some reason. I don't know why.
It's so weird.
Yeah, it's so weird they didn't gift us with the ability to be an Olympic gold medalist. I mean, obviously we would have handled it so well.
Yes.
With such humility and
absolutely.
kindness. And
Yeah.
anyway, all that to say, you're awesome. You're better than me, but whatever. In my heart, I'm better than you, so that's good.
Oh
No.
my gosh.
I'm just kidding.
Kelly, I'm reading this little card about your book here that we're going to talk about, but it says you are a 4-time Olympian and the winningest athlete in snowboarding history. One, I'm impressed because I didn't know winningest was a word.
Yeah, most people don't. Most people think they had to invent it.
But that means you've won the most of all the things in
Of all the
snowboarding
things.
history.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I've been doing it for a very long time. I think I have around 150 podium finishes and 70-something wins at this point, which is pretty wild.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay, so for people like me who aren't sure about sports, what is a podium finish?
Oh my goodness.
That's amazing.
That's not allowed, that question.
Tell me. There is no dumb question.
you
My
know-
teacher said the only dumb question is that not asked.
You know the boxes that you see people standing on after an event? That's 1, 2, and 3.
okay.
So that's the podium.
So how many finishes?
Around 140 podium
okay, see,
finishes.
now that stat becomes all the more impressive to me. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh,
You want to make top 3 in the event, and if you win it, it's even better, obviously.
That's
but
amazing.
podium finish is usually a pretty successful day.
That's amazing. Well,
I get podium finishes too,
all the time.
all the time.
I have a few of those.
I do it in CrossFit a lot when we have a step up.
All right.
I step
Nice,
up on the
nicely
box.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Thanks.
Well, Kelly, before we get into your amazing book and kind of your life, you want to give us your life story in 2 minutes? Like
2 minutes?
Yeah, like where did you like from I'm born to here I am now in 2 minutes.
All right.
Go.
Ready, go. Start the clock. I was born in Newport, Rhode Island. Lived there till I was 7, and then I moved to a small mountain town in Vermont. There wasn't a lot going on in that town. My dad was a ski bum. We lived above a pizza place, and he just wanted to ski every day. So he opened the restaurant at night so we could be on the mountain every day. I started skiing when I was 2, started snowboarding when I was 7. It was kind of like before it was cool.
So talk a little bit about that, if I could interject. Just like snowboarding culture when you were growing up was not like something that girls were doing.
No, it's hard to describe. We were kind of this obscure sport. It wasn't even really a sport. It was a lifestyle. I started the first year was even allowed on my mountain. We weren't even really welcome at the ski resorts in 1990. There was no such thing as the X Games.
Wow.
It was long before it was ever an Olympic sport. And so, when I started my aspirations to be an Olympian, that just wasn't part of it. I just fell in love with this sport. And, when I went to high school, I had an opportunity to go to school half day and snowboard half day if I went to this private school. So talked my parents into that one, which was great.
Yes.
And basically it revolved around competitions. And so once I got into the school when I was a freshman in high school, I started competing. And I fell in love with competing. That was the first year snowboarding became an Olympic sport, 1998. I recorded the Olympics on a VHS tape. And I watched it after school. And I really had one of those moments when I was 14. I was like, this is what I want to give my life to.
Wow.
So that's when it happened for you, 14. It's the first year that snowboarding is an Olympic sport.
Yeah.
And this is something you've been doing now since you were 7.
Yes.
And all of a sudden it becomes
it becomes a future.
Goal, yeah.
It becomes a future. I think anybody when they're kids, especially CJ, like you want to be an Olympian.
Absolutely.
When you see it on TV, it just kind of captivates you. And
I must have missed that show.
and all of a sudden, this thing that I loved became an Olympic sport, and there was an opportunity for me to pursue that. And I didn't honestly excel in a whole lot of other things in my life at the time. I wasn't a great student. I had learning disabilities. I struggled through high school. And so I saw this sport that I loved, and I saw a future is what I saw. And then I committed to that dream, and I kind of worked with my parents the next 4 years again, as I say, this was a career that I wanted, but when you go to your parents, and I think the life of a professional athlete, it's a bit risky. Like when your kid tells you okay, here's my plan. I want to be a professional athlete. That's a really dicey future.
Odds
it's
are not in your favor.
It's
totally.
not. It's not sustainable. Especially with a sport that was just kind of obscure. It wasn't what it is today. So, my parents they told me you can be anything and do anything that you want. And I was like, all right, guys, I figured it out. I'm going to be a professional snowboarder. And they're like, yeah, anything but that. And so it was a lot of give and take. They paid for half my tuition to the mountain school, and I paid for the other half. They kind of invested in me if I invested in myself.
Wow.
And so I worked my way through high school. When I was a junior, I got picked up by the U.S. snowboard team. And that really started my international competitions. And then basically I had 1 year when I got out of high school to prove to my parents that I could make it a career, that I could become a professional snowboarder. And that was the year of the 2002 Olympics. So I had one chance to make this Olympic team. And that year I actually won the U.S. Open, I won the X Games, and I won the Olympics when I was 18.
Wow.
And you're 18, yeah.
And my first words,
Me too.
my first words to my dad in the finish area after I won the Olympics was, "Does this mean I don't have to go to school?" And he's just crying. My parents are bawling their eyes out. And I'm like, really? That's what you're thinking about right now? I had to prove myself every step of the way.
Wow.
And I wanted this dream. I wanted it to be a reality. And that Olympics in 2002 really brought snowboarding into mainstream America. It really established the sport. And I've been chasing down that dream ever since. I've been competing now for almost 20 years. And I'm approaching making my 5th Winter Olympic team this year. And no no woman from the States has ever made 5 Winter Olympic teams. So from any sport. So to be able to be in this position to pursue one more Olympic team would be incredible accomplishment if I were to make it. And my plan's always the same. I'll go for it every single time, given the opportunity.
That's amazing.
Totally amazing.
Where was Jesus in all of this? Like, when did you grow up Christian?
No, I had never stepped foot in a church till I was about 20.
Wow.
I didn't grow up in a Christian home. And I basically, I pursued this career, and I had an idea that when you're successful, it just goes hand in hand with being fulfilled. And when I was 18 years old, I had accomplished every single thing that was in my heart to do.
Which is not something most 18-year-olds can say.
No, I had to go all the way to the...
Your friends are like, what, partying? And
yeah, totally. I had to
graduating.
go to the top to figure out that what I was looking for wasn't there.
Wow.
And not that many people have that experience. But for me, I wanted to be, looking back now, I wanted to be significant. I think that's one of our greatest human needs. And we look for it in relationships and careers and in achievements. And I wanted to be significant. And I had reached the top of snowboarding, and I wasn't. I felt hollow. I felt empty. I didn't know who I was. And so, after I won the Olympics, I started this journey. Well, I guess I started this depression after I won the Olympics for the next few years of just kind of spinning my wheels. From an outside perspective, it's like, I'm hanging with Britney Spears and I've got all these incredible opportunities. I'm living the dream, right? But inside, I was just hollow, hollow, hollow. And in 2004, I was writing in my journal that morning about how if I didn't wake up tomorrow, I didn't think it mattered. And I didn't think anybody else would care. And that's just where I was at. And snowboarding was still going really well. I went out to my first competition of the year, and I made finals. I was standing at the bottom of the pipe, and someone had come down because they had fallen in both runs, and they didn't make finals. And when someone's crying, you kind of like pretend you're not listening, but you're listening. Yeah. And this girl was really upset, and her friend came up to her and said, "Hey, it's all right. God still loves you." And I happened to overhear it. And that comment stirred something in me that I could not ignore. And I figured there was Bibles in hotel rooms, right? So I rushed back to my hotel room from the bottom of the pipe that day, and I found a King James version of the Bible, which
proved to be a little, Bibles are
proved to be a little tricky to read. God, where art thou? I couldn't really figure it out, but there was something that was really stirred in me that day, and I found that girl. She was staying in my hotel, and I actually went to her hotel room, and I knocked on her door, and I said, "Hey, my name's Kelly," and keep in mind, I'm the current Olympic gold medalist.
Wow.
And I knock on this girl's door. And I say, "Hey, my name's Kelly. I think you might be a Christian, and I think you need to tell me about God." And she was taken back a little bit and invited me in. And I just knocked on the right door that day. I had an idea that being a Christian was about following the rules, about being good all the time. And she just said, "Hey, Jesus made you for a relationship. It's not about being religious." And I started this journey of trying to figure out, who God was and what he thought of me. And I think people think about, action sports athletes, and we look like adrenaline junkies and risk takers. But for me, I'm a calculated risk taker, so I didn't just jump into this. I had never thought about God before a day in my life. I had never wondered why we were here. I didn't have a grid for any of that. I didn't even really know anybody who was a Christian. And I was 20 years old, so I took the next 5 months and I just kind of explored who God was, and people kept popping up in my life who had been praying for me, who were, I got that book, Purpose Driven Life, and that really transformed me and gave me a foundation. And 5 months later, someone asked me if I was saved, and I said, maybe. I don't even really know what that means, And they're like, "Well, this is what it is." And I asked myself 2 questions, if I could ever wake up another day and not talk to God, and that was no. And could I ever pretend he wasn't real, and that was no. And so I said, "All right, Jesus, I'm in." And I started a journey of figuring out who I was. For so long, snowboarding was my identity, and it was how I knew myself, and it was where I got that sense of self-worth and significance. And so I started to figure out who I was apart from what I did for the first time in my life. And I started I got plugged into a church community, and I met people who loved me for who I was, not for what I did for the first time in my life.
Wow.
And that really was transformative. And it gave me snowboarding back, to be quite honest. Whenever your identity is tied to what you do, it doesn't become very fun. If I'm threatened, if my identity is threatened by how I perform that day, it becomes very stressful and very unstable. And so all of a sudden, snowboarding wasn't something I had to do to prove to people who I was, to prove to myself who I was. It was something I got to do. And so it was really, really an incredible journey that I started with the Lord. And it's pretty wild that I'm still here all these years later, still chasing down the same dream.
One of the things that, you are with us here at church, and so we get to see and hear stories of your life that I'm sure not everybody gets to hear. And one of the things that's always moved me is I'm a slightly competitive person. Not very much, but a little bit competitive. But you have somehow you actually have a reason to be competitive.
I compete for a living.
Yeah, I don't really have a reason to be competitive, but you do, and yet you tell these stories of these other snowboarders that you walk with, that you encourage, that it's like you give strength and invest in and make them better at a sport that then makes them better at competing with you. And that had to be a journey, I'm assuming, to get there.
Yeah, sports have just such a way of testing our hearts and our motives. There's, I think that's why we love sports events. We love the Olympics. We love all these sports stories, because they really show you what you're made of. And for some reason, I think it's a good idea to go out every weekend in the winter and see what I'm made of. And, I've had a very successful snowboarding career, and I'm really thankful for it. But I got to looking at things, I think probably heading into the 2010 games, I had all these great competition results. I had all these great accomplishments. And I started thinking about what I would look back at and be proud of. And I realized that if your dream only includes you, your dream's too small.
That's really good.
And I looked around, and I have all these great records, and we joke about my podium finishes and how many medals I've won, and it's like I don't want to look back and only see the things that I've accomplished. I want to make sure that the sport and the culture that I'm part of is better because I'm a part of it, and I want to make sure that I'm not only investing in myself and in my ability to perform, but I'm investing in the people around me. People are our greatest asset. And for me to say I love people well and I'm in a performance culture, that means setting myself aside and choosing to invest in them. And I've done that in a lot of different ways. And that was really the heart behind this book as well, where I wanted to take the things that I've learned and make them transferable. I'm well aware that I am a 34-year-old snowboarder and I won't be able to do this forever, but I want to make sure that when I'm done competing, that my influence doesn't end there.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so, looking at this career that I've had, I want to look back and see the people that I've impacted long after I'm present in the start gate,
I'm so glad we're talking about your book because it just came out in December. It's called Inspired, Pursuit of Progress, and we're super, super excited about it. And I actually want to ask you something or touch on something. You have a chapter called Facing Fear. All of us try stuff, everybody, our listeners, we have big dreams, and it is so hard to dream big without fear, and you have faced fear and failure, and then you're older, and you yourself say, this snowboarding physical career can come to an end any day. Talk to us a little bit about that. 'Cause I know it's vulnerable, it's real, it's right in front of you. It can stop at any day. How do you deal with the fear and get up again? And also, what's next? Because this is not the end. Like you're young, really, still.
Thank you.
But it's a real thing in sports. There's a certain age. And how do you deal with it? What's going on your inside? And how do you prepare for, is this the end? Is it next year? What is in your heart and mind about this, if you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, in the book, I really let people in like I've never done before. I'm not a huge personality. I don't live my life every moment on social media. You won't see what I had for breakfast this morning. And so in the book, I really found a really great way to put my life on display. And I put the mountaintop experiences and I put the valley experiences all in there. I try to make my life the message and let people see how I process through real life emotions, disappointment,
Right.
fear, like you mentioned. And in snowboarding, honestly, that's one of the first comments that people will say as soon as they find out that I'm a professional snowboarder. They're like, wow, that's crazy. You must be so brave.
Right.
And like I mentioned, I am a calculated risk taker, but there's only so much you can anticipate and prepare for. And in my preparation, I guess I want to be faithful with the opportunities that I've had. That's my aim in preparing and in moving forward. I want to be able to look back and say, wow, I made the most of my opportunities, and I was faithful with my opportunities. I think anytime you prepare too much, it can slip into a form of control if you're not careful.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's definitely a balance between being faithful and not dipping into control and allowing the Lord to show up. And for me, with how I approach my athletics and my career, and there's a lot of things I can't control. There's a lot of things that I can't anticipate. But the thing that has allowed me to navigate that space of the unknown is really comes back to that identity thing. It comes back to being really secure and safe in knowing who I am apart from what I do, and knowing that I'm significant if I never were to step onto my snowboard again. If I was never able to perform, I can rest in my purpose in the Lord and not in my performance on my snowboard. And that has knowing that, well, first of all, you never figure it out. I will tell you, fast forward to the end of the story, it's not something you ever master. And I get these heart tests all the time in this competitive setting where I see what I've built. And sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised with what I find. And sometimes I'm bummed that I'm jealous, or I'm bummed that I did not learn this lesson as well as I thought I had, or I'm coming back around to why am I afraid again? I think you have to be okay with being in process. And this book is called The Pursuit of Progress. I thought about a life of embracing process, but that didn't sound that inviting. But man, oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm in process. Or how you doing? Making progress sounds much better. And so that was really the heart behind this, was to just share what that's like, because the reality is you never arrive in life. You never figure it out. And for me, I navigate those fearful situations by knowing that I'm deeply, deeply significant. And at the same time, I'm very much aware that this may be my last rodeo in these Olympic Games. And I think people look at accomplishments, and especially like the life of an athlete, where you think that a lot of athletes think that their athletic career is the pinnacle of their life. And for me, I honestly don't believe that my life has even really gotten going yet.
Good. Yes.
Oh, that's good.
And so,
I agree.
I'm not looking as like, okay, I'm just getting ready to decline the rest of my life. God's got so much more for me than just being able to be a professional snowboarder. And so I just invite him in, and I just walk that out daily. And I just look at the challenges and champion, the progress that I do make, really knowing that I never arrive in life, that I'm never going to be defined by snowboarding. And I look forward to, the future. And I think this book is one of those stepping stones for me. I believe it's the first of many writing projects where I'm able to take the things that I've learned that have made me successful in snowboarding and really translate that to other people and see them hit their potential.
It is amazing, that you're 34. Like sometimes I forget that you're so young. And I'm like...
Again, thank you.
No, I mean,
she's
when
done
you
so
said
much,
that and hearing like, this is your 5th Olympics and you're 34.
This summer, I actually competed in a World Cup in New Zealand against 2 women on the podium. Remember,
Yes,
Becky?
now I know
The
what that
box.
means.
Yeah, on the
Yes,
box.
The box.
And if you added up both of their ages, it equaled mine.
Bless your heart.
My gosh.
I'm 45 and I haven't been on the podium, but what I hear is there is hope.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to come back to the fear thing again, because I feel like there's something really significant in there for our listeners. And that is that what I hear is that sometimes you have to do something afraid.
Definitely.
Because success is not the absence of fear.
Yeah.
Like you can't, because I bet you went down that pipe many times fully afraid, yet you did it trusting the Lord, trusting Him with the outcome, trusting Him with your heart, your process. But like many of us want to disqualify ourselves because we feel fear and we think as Christians it should be completely absent in our process, and that's the only way we're going to make it. And that is a lie. It ties in what you talk about, your identity, being afraid and doing something great afraid. It's nothing to do with who you are, and it's not your identity.
Yeah, I think because we experience certain emotions doesn't mean that we're at the mercy of them.
Right.
I actually had an experience this week where I was just kind of going through it, just having a really bad week. And I was complaining, I think is the proper term, to one of my friends. And she was listening to me and a good friend listens, but a great friend listens and then asks you what God said about your situation. And she said, hey, have you prayed about what you just, told me about? Have you asked the Lord about what's going on right now? And I said, no. And I said, fine, I'll do that and I'll get back to you. And I prayed about what I was going through, and it just seemed like a storm. It just seemed like my life was a mess. And so I said, God, what's going on? Like, am I out of step with you? Are you not with me? I feel afraid heading into this season. Like, what's going on? And I heard the Lord very clearly say, like, what are you so afraid of? You of little faith. And I'm like, I know that scripture. Hold on, let me glance at that. And we all know the story. It's when the disciples were in the boat with Jesus and he was sleeping and a storm came up and they're afraid for their lives, right? And they wake him up and tell him about the storm, and he says, what are you so afraid of, you of little faith? And I think sometimes when we experience storms in our lives and we get afraid, we think all of a sudden God is not with us. But those people, they were experiencing Jesus. They were hearing him preach. They were doing a life with him. They were seeing miracles. They were with him in a storm. Just because you're in a storm doesn't mean Jesus isn't with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we think we're failing when we're afraid. We think we're out of sync with the Lord. All these things come into our, like, oh my gosh, am I even doing the right thing with my life? Should I still be a competitive snowboarder? I'm trying for my 5th Winter Olympics. Am I totally out of step right now? And as I asked the Lord, he said, hey, what are you so afraid of? You have little faith. Trust me. It's an invitation, I think, when we get afraid to trust him.
So good.
And it's real. Like, I would be lying if I said I'm never afraid when I snowboard. It's just about, it's not about mastering life or your emotions or arriving somewhere. It's about doing life with the Lord.
Yes.
And
Do you know
growing.
what else
Love that.
I love with that story is they were with Jesus. And I think so many of us in real life think if you're afraid, well, you must have stepped away from the
Totally.
Lord. Or we're in sin or something's
Wow,
going on.
it's so
They
true.
were in the boat with Jesus.
Yeah.
Like they couldn't have been closer to Jesus, yet they still felt afraid. And I think we think we're successful if we don't have the negative emotions.
Right.
Like don't feel fear, don't feel anxiousness, don't feel anything. And instead it's like, oh, actually I'm a real person
Yeah.
and there's a storm. Jesus is in the boat with me. I can choose to trust him, but it doesn't mean I won't still have some fear to walk through.
Right. That's exactly where I was this week. I was like, oh, Jesus is with me. I'm okay. I'm afraid, but Jesus is with me. I'm
That's
okay.
so good, Kelly.
And that's real. You know, that's part of being human. And like with all my accomplishments and all the things I've done, it's just I still go back and learn these lessons. I still process through anxiety and fear and jealousy and all of these things. And it doesn't mean that I'm not walking with the Lord. It doesn't mean that I've, I'm in sin. It's just, it means that like I have an opportunity to trust the Lord. And I think
That's so good.
in this book, what I really do is I try to redefine success in a healthy way. And we think it means mastering our circumstances. And we think it means being perfect. And we think it means winning Olympic gold medals. You know, all these, we measure it by external circumstances. And for me, I've really learned to measure success by growth. And that's what it looks like. It means personal growth. It doesn't mean becoming the best, being the best, looking perfect. It means like, did I grow as a person since yesterday? Did I grow in my relationship with the Lord since last week? Like, am I just a little bit less anxious than I was last time I had a panic attack? Yeah, I think so. That's a win. That's a win for me, you know? And I just try to let people in on my life and say,
love
hey,
it.
look, I've got all these accomplishments, but I'm a real person.
Just because you're the winningest snowboarding athlete doesn't mean you've
Doesn't mean
conquered
I've got it all
these-
figured out. And you know, that's what it is. Even as I walk with these girls that are half my age now, where I get to do life with them, like I let them see me when I'm winning, and I let them see me when I've fallen first run and I don't think I'm going to make finals and I need a hug and someone to say you can do it. I let them in.
I think one of the things that we see plague the gender of females is competition and jealousy and insecurity. And I mean, we're, you're competing against, like you said, girls half your age. What have been some of the keys just practically that you've done to keep your heart in check? Like, okay, I'm 34. You're 18. I know everything more than you do. Like, you know what I mean? I'm sure they're coming in like they know everything. We've all been around younger women and have done the eye roll like, oh my gosh, please. You know, what
Not
are some
me.
no, never. Not CJ. What are some of the things, or we've been made insecure when a younger girl walks in the room and we're like, oh, you know, do you feel like the old lady? And what are some things you've done to keep your heart in check?
A few years ago when my friends started to retire, a lot of my peers, all of a sudden, you know, I was with all these young women, and I found that it's easier, you know, with my peers, we were a bit more competitive. You know, we went back and forth. And with these younger women, I'm realizing that they quite literally had posters of me in their bedrooms growing up.
Wow.
They waited in line for my autograph 15 years ago. Wow. You know, the woman who is one of the most talented young riders in the half-pipe circuit right now, a few years ago, she tugged on my coat in the lift line and asked to go up the lift with me. And now she's like far surpassed me in her ability, you know? So there's this dynamic where all these girls look up to me. And I found with my peers, I didn't have as much influence because we were secretly threatened by one another. And it's very hard to receive from people who you're threatened by.
That's a good word.
And the second that you're threatened by someone, your influence goes away completely. If they're threatened by you, they're never going to receive something from you. So you have to disarm that. You have to dismantle that. And it definitely comes back to that identity thing and being willing to go through the heart tests and go through the experiences where, you know, I just see it so clearly in my competitions. You know, the rubber meets the road, and we see what we've built. I trained 4 years for a 30-second half pipe around at the Olympics. And you work 4 years to see what you've built. And then in that moment, you find out if you've done it, done your homework physically, mentally, that's the moment where everything gets revealed. And that's where the heart test comes in for me as well. And I've just kind of come to the conclusion that seeing other people succeed should inspire you. It shouldn't trigger you. And the second that I get triggered when someone else succeeds and I do not, I go to the Lord and I say, hey, where did I go astray? Like, if I believe that I'm here to contribute to the world around me, that is my approach. I think when you're there to get something, you're there to get that significance. You're there to get that achievement. You're there to get that medal, stand on top of that podium, and walk away with some sort of achievement or sense of significance or self-worth. And so once you can kind of separate those things, you can really contribute to the world around you. I want to make sure that I'm giving more than I'm getting, that I see all the opportunities I've had, all the things that I've learned, and I realize that I can give them to these younger women and they don't have to spend 20 years crying it out, working through stuff. There was a experience that I had when we talk about heart tests and seeing other people succeed. I was the first woman to land a 1080 in competition, which is 3 full rotations, back in 2011. And I wanted to be able to be the first woman to ever do 2 1080s in competition. You do one frontwards, you do one backwards. That's just how it goes. And I was at a contest in Utah, and this young woman, Chloe Kim, who's just this incredible snowboarder, the same girl who tugged on my jacket a few years ago and asked to go up the lift with me, she was attempting back-to-back 1080s in competition, and she went up, and her second run, and she just barely missed the landing, and she had one more chance. And I knew what she had to do to be able to land it. And so when she came down after her second run, I walked up to her and I said, hey, if you put out the landing gear and you expect to land that, you will land that trick. It looked like it surprised you and you weren't ready for the landing. Get ready for that landing and go up there and try it again. And she went up in her third run and she landed it. First woman ever to do back-to-back 1080s in a competition.
The thing that you were wanting to do.
The very thing that I wanted to do. And it's in those situations where we choose to contribute instead of choose to protect ourselves that you make a difference, that you bring the sport forward, that your shoulders become a stepping stone for people who will go further than you can. Again, if your dream is only about you, it's too small of a dream. It lives and dies with you unless we can figure out how to make it transferable to the next generation. It's just too small.
Kelly, that is so good. What I love about you is that every single woman, no matter where you're at as a stay-at-home mom, in the business world, whatever it is, that is real life. Like, it doesn't just relate to an Olympic snowboarder.
Right.
Like, we all compete with each other. We all want to protect ourselves. We all have our insecurities and fears that we don't want to face or recognize or whatever. And you sharing and being willing to be real, like, hey, I look like the picture of success and where everything is great. And it is great.
Spoiler alert, I don't have it all together.
But to be able to go, I mean, the message I get is that basically I'm an Olympic athlete because we struggle with similar things. Good to know. I'm on my own podium. But in all seriousness, this is exactly what so many women need to hear. And I hope you hear that you can do this wherever you're at, that every woman that is out there, we face the fears, we face the challenges, we walk it through, but with kindness. I mean, oh my gosh, being able to tell somebody how to succeed over you is one of the hardest things to do, I think. Well, maybe if you're competitive. But I think for anybody, actually. I don't even get to be competitive. It's for anybody.
Yeah, and that day at the bottom of the pipe with Chloe, when that heart test came around and I saw how I acted when she completed that second 1080, I was more proud than jealous. And that's the truth. And those are the heart tests that we have to be willing to go to examine how we're really doing with the Lord. Invite the Lord into those places where it's hard for you, where you struggle, where you compare yourself, where it would be very easy to not contribute to the world around you. And also, CJ, just as a heads up, not everybody understands sports as well as we do.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Same level.
But if you don't have a grid for snowboarding, for being an Olympic athlete, like CJ and I, you're still going to get a lot from this book.
Yeah.
I tried to make it approachable and relatable, and it's full of kingdom concepts. And it's actually not a faith-based book. I'm really transparent about my beliefs in the Lord and what that looks like and in my process. But I just tried to make it approachable. If you don't believe in the things that I believe in, if you don't think like me, you're still going to get a lot from this book.
That's so good. So good. I do want you to know, Kelly, that you have a community of people that are Kelly fans here. I mean, you should see when you're competing and there's any way Natalie gets it up on a computer or on the TV screen. We're pretty much psycho Kelly fans.
I've seen backstage at conferences where there's a little computer screen going, and in between sessions, everybody's cheering and screaming. And
totally.
Yeah, it's been awesome getting to be part of this community. For me, moving to Sacramento seemed a little bit strange because, there's not that much snowboarding going on here.
What?
And, I lived in Mammoth Lakes forever, and I loved living there. But moving here really sustained my snowboarding career in a really unique way because, at face value, you'd be like, wow, you're not snowboarding more living in Sacramento. But I'm in a community, and I'm with a group of people who champion me, who believe in me. I'm in a healthy local church that sustains me being able to travel, being able to pursue the Lord and be on the road a ton while people are investing in me, while staying connected to a healthy local church. Honestly, being part of this community has enabled me and sustained me to go for another Olympic run.
So once again, what you're saying, no, I'm just kidding.
And in conclusion, my next gold medal will be yours.
Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for that.
You can go to the store with it.
Oh my gosh, everywhere.
Let's go to Safeway.
Yeah, with my gold medal.
Yes.
Oh, this is great. No.
We support you, CJ.
Yes. I will say, it has been one of the greatest honors to walk with you, Kelly, and to have you a part of our community. Like, you see how an athlete and somebody with notoriety can carry themselves, and you carry yourself the complete opposite of just humble. You're part of the team. You show up and you serve like you're just one of us, and it's amazing. You're a real
Thanks.
gift.
I love getting to be part of things and, just be part of this community. It's a great privilege for me.
So, Kelly, the book is out, but where can people buy this book?
You can get it on my website, kellyclarkinspired.com. It's out on retail. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at the Jesus Culture bookstore.
Okay.
So you know where to go.
We are giving away a couple autographed copies. And if you want, write in. I'll sign it too. I mean, it's kind of like my book in a way.
It's like a twofer. I like it.
I'm totally kidding. I have nothing to do with Kelly's success, if anybody really thought I was serious.
Thanks for listening with us. It was so fun being with you. We will see you next month.